Today's dedication is for Terax, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Squall is a Voltron Orzhov commander that gives creatures we control double strike when they attack alone, but we want to be swinging in with Squall because he specifically deals combat damage to a player and returns a mana value 3 or less from graveyard to battlefield. So what we want to be doing is equipping him up with big scary artifacts, making him a threat on his own with Voltron/commander damage alone, but also gaining value from the reanimations as we do it. So let's go over the Voltron package. First of all, Colossus Hammer. We can equip things for free with the likes of Sigarda's Aid. We've got Arden over here as well. There is another means of doing it that we'll go over later. But as you can see, Colossus Hammer equips for 8, but if you equip it for free, +10/+10, noteworthy it can't gain flying. That's caught me out before, but doesn't matter in this deck. Oh, Naginata, mainly in here for the trample, but the power buff is nice as well. Shadow Spear gives trample and lifelink. Sometimes the hexproof and indestructible loss on your opponent's stuff can be relevant as well, an easy one to forget. Zephyr Boots actually does give flying, so it is relevant with that Colossus Hammer. That can not only help to get Squall through, but it is a loot effect, so we can draw and then discard something ready to reanimate with Squall. So this pulls double duty in a deck like this. Blackblade Reforged gets a big buff per land we control. Brotherhood Regalia, one of the best equipment printed in recent memory. Ward 2 and it's unblockable, 3 to play and equip. Then Hero's Heirloom gives trample and haste. We've got a few haste enablers, obviously Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots goes in a lot of decks. Thran Power Suit is more protection. This gives a big buff for each other equipment we have on here, as well as Ward 2. Trailblazer's Boots, we need to be pushing damage through with our commander, so we need to not have them chump blocking on us. Hammer of Nizarn, I forgot to mention previously, that is not only indestructible to protect the commander, but it gives those free equips out as well. Nettle Cyst gives big buffs per artifact and enchantment we control. And then the Buster Sword, I've never actually played, but I have high hopes for, especially in a deck that gives the commander double strike. Draw a card on each hit, and then look at the damage that you've dealt and get a free spell that has a mana value less than the damage dealt. It just feels wrong giving Squall the Buster Sword, but I don't think there is a Gunblade equipment. So we're buffing our commander, we're reanimating stuff. What is it that we are reanimating? Well, there's the obvious removal packages like Anguished Unmaking, Swords to Plowshares, but a lot of the removal is permanent based, particularly in Edicts, so Accursed Marauder, Demon's Disciple, Fleshbag Marauder and the Plague Crafter will all enter, sacrifice themselves, ready to be reanimated again, and force our opponents to sack creatures. Not as good against opponents who are trying to go wide, but you'd be surprised how often these effects clear your opponent's boards entirely of creatures. Lauren will enter and blow up an artifact or enchantment, and Cathar Commando is the same thing, except we sacrifice this in order to get the ability, but having to pay to sacrifice this is a small price to pay, seeing as how it will enable itself for reanimation again. And effects that sacrifice themselves are very much appreciated in this list. That's why we've got Seal of Cleansing for more artifact and enchantment removal. Same with Aura of Silence, that can just sit there and tax your opponents as well. I think on the previous game this really hurt our opponents, bought us a hell of a lot of time. And then Seal of Doom does it on non-black creatures. Again, sacrifice it, can reanimate it again later on. Jitte mainly in here for the -1/-1. We'll get 4 counters on this per attack, assuming that all the attacks get through with Squall, and that means that we can distribute 4 debuffs to our opponent's stuff. Obviously goes with the Voltron theme as well. But it's not only interaction that we are reanimating with our Squall. We've got the, with regards to ramp, the obvious cards included here. But Wayfarer's Bauble, one that can Rampant Growth us and be reanimated, as can Burnished Heart, 3 mana, grab 2 basics, put them straight into play. That will mount up a lot over the course of a game. And then Crucible of Worlds, if we end up looting lands into the bin and we don't necessarily want to grab them back with Squall, then there's no harm in throwing in 1 Crucible of Worlds effect in the deck, making sure that we hit our land drops. And then with card draw, the theme continues. Skull Clamp. If we're going to be sacrificing creatures like Burnished Heart and the like, then we might as well throw Skull Clamp on there and draw a couple of cards while we're at it. Can't abuse this as much as in other decks, but still very, very good. Mask of Memory, part of the Voltron theme, as well as looting, so we can throw things into the bin selectively to reanimate, and we'll actually do that on the first strike, so we're setting up Squall for the second strike to reanimate what we discarded straight away. SRAM cantrips, as does Pure Steel Paladin, although this can give us the Metalcraft free equips, which we went over before. So a bit more redundancy there. Diasight, we can look at up to 4 cards. We're basically going to throw the top 2 permanents in our library straight into the bin to reanimate with Squall, and then draw a fresh 2 cards, and just like that we've cleared 4 cards off the top of our library. Sword of Fire and Ice, similar to the Jitte, can draw us 2 cards thanks to Double Strike, but it can distribute a couple of shocks as well for 4 damage in total. Helpful for getting rid of stray planeswalkers and things like that. Tival's Judgment plays into the graveyard theme. Grabbing any card from the graveyard gives us either a card draw, an untapped treasure, or a zombie token. It's a potent but very simple deck really, so that's pretty much it. We've got some redundancy with regards to the graveyard stuff, so Entomb is a tutor into the bin. We can do that at instant speed in response to getting through with our commander, ready to reanimate whatever it is that we throw in. Animate Dead and Sun Titan can also drag things out of the bin. The Titan wouldn't be the worst thing to suit up as a Voltron if we lost our commander for some reason. Then just some quick protection stuff, Indestructible and +2/+2. Obviously the buffs are good with our commander and the double strike. That's an extra 4 points of commander damage onto our opponents. Boromir can counter free spells, but more importantly give our creatures indestructible by sacrificing itself, ready to be reanimated again, as can Jarina, and every time she is sacrificed to protect our commander, she can re-enter and exile an opponent's graveyard for some graveyard hate. So suit up Squall, get through for a lot of commander damage, and reanimate a bunch of stuff along the way. Let's see how it does. A 1-lander, or actually a 2-lander with Fell the Profane into Talisman is not terrible. Got a bit of card draw as well, so yeah, let's try this. Playing against Arcades, Shirei, and then partners Vile Smasher and Sakashima. The partner player shows us Underworld Breach and the Ethereal Forager off the Faithless Looting. Shirei is a Shadowborn Apostle deck. Draw into another land, so we'll drop that and the Talisman. A sack outlet for the Shirei player. And another land for us, so do we risk getting down Squall? I think we should be fine doing that. Our opponent's throwing all of their cards into play, so 4 cards each, a piece in their hand. Got a few defenders in play over here, a Phyrexian Arena, and there's a Sigarda's Aid as well. Okay, so are we just knocking a player out? Seems as though that's what we're doing. And then we can try the Regalia first, before we show our opponents the Colossus Hammer. And that equips for free with the enchantment, hence the reason we got it out here. And that successfully lands, so now we've got a 13/14 double striker. And I'm scared of the Underworld Breach in the bin, so I'm going to go into the left. Like I said, nothing to reanimate here, but hopefully we can give ourselves something with Dire Sight and the Surveil 2 there. But if we're one-shotting opponents, it might not even matter. Could be that Shirei has an Edict effect for us. The white and green player can obviously get rid of equipment as well. No Edict though, and Ayara, followed by another Shadowborn Apostle. Ayara continuing to drain us, and it will, the more Shadowborn Apostles enter. But as it stands now, we can get rid of the mono-black player as well, thanks to how incredible the Brotherhood Regalia is. Might be that Arcades is forced into a board wipe. Assault Formation is now hit play, is going to need multiple green mana in order to make the defenders able to attack. They at least deal damage equal to their toughness now though. But once again, looks like we're just winning the whole game within a few turns. Let's go for the Jitte, not seeing any removal here at all. Jitte with double strike is going to be able to deal with those Shadowborn Apostles as well. So let's drop a Dire Sight before attacks, see if we can actually reanimate stuff as well. Pretty much any permanents go into the bin here, so Burnished Heart, Graveyard, and the Phyrexian Tower, same thing, which draws us into a Plains and an Accursed Marauder. Drop the land and swing into the right. We might not even connect here because our opponent might scoop in response. Double strike goes on the stack when we attack, and he's graciously taking it. Let's grab the Phyrexian Tower with the first strike. Jitte gets a couple of counters per hit, so it'll get 4 in total here. And yeah, our opponent taking it is relevant there because now we've got the 4 counters on the Jitte. We can be even more oppressive than we've already been. Let's remove a counter to do -1/-1 on the Apostle, the Viscera Seer, and the Shadowborn Apostle. And then just for the sake of being the ultimate arsehole apparently, Accursed Marauder. Have to sacrifice the Burnished Heart to do that, which means we're not dodging Edicts, but our opponent deserves to get one off on us. This puts the Marauder in our bin, ready for next turn. So yeah, Sigarda's Aid right off the top, making all the difference apparently. Alright, just decides to concede for obvious reasons. And just to rub salt in the wounds, our perfect game was continuing there with Troubling Pairs and SRAM and Night's Whisper to keep cards in our hand. Then another Edict in case the other one fails us for whatever reason. I can't imagine that that's the only game you're going to get, so let's try another one. Right, let's try again, although Sigarda's Aid is back in for another game. Got a lot of mana there, so let's keep it, can hopefully refill with Mask of Memory. Maybe even buy ourselves time with a Toxic Deluge as well. Up against Slicer, Corona and Rada. Seems as though Rada has accidentally passed through his turn here. Corona jumps ahead with a Sol Ring. Pyretic Ritual from the red player allows him into a turn 2 Slicer. And that swings in at the 5 colour player straight away. So are we going to hold off on something like SRAM? So that we can Toxic Deluge at some point? Let's get down Sigarda's Aid is hopefully safe. Maybe we could even Mask of Memory into a Toxic Deluge. We'll deal 6 points of Commander right down the middle. Slicer swings in at us this time. And I dare say that Corona is going to do the same thing. Rada still hasn't played any lands, by the way. I'm not sure what's going on there. And Slicer instead goes towards Rada, which, if he's still around next turn, I'll be doing myself. Beamtown Beatstick goes onto the Commander now and comes in to hit us again. So makes 2 treasure, putting Rada onto 14 points of Commander damage, which means 1 more combat should deal with him, and then 4 life into Toxic Deluge to deal with this Commander. So we could have 2 fast games in a row here. Kept a 0 lander apparently, but finally gets into one. So manages to get the Commander into play thanks to the Beatstick. Throws that back on the Commander and is not focused on us this time. We'll put Corona at 13 points of Commander. Alright, so if we're going to be stuck with this thing, maybe we could try and draw into some spot removal and go for Mask of Memory straight onto it. Go for a Swamp into Orzhov's Signet into Mask of Memory. We're just down next turn anyway if we don't do anything about this, so hopefully our opponent takes both hits. Going into the left against Rada, so make our opponent some more treasure. Draw 2, discard 1, we're just getting flooded. And our opponent goes down on turn 4. Draw 2 more, takes us into Colossus Hammer, that would be funny. So we've got 1 more set of draws that we can make, but we're going down next turn, 2 attacks. Corona will be forced to take us out here. A Eureka. Each player may put a permanent from their hand onto the battlefield. Well, we can get blockers out this way at least, so this works out alright. In fact, we can get blockers out with Colossus Hammer equipped. So we're not done yet. Our opponent has Alexios in play now. There's a Necroma's Memorial and a Doubling Season, so, well, they've got flying and protection from black and red. We've got more chance of drawing into stuff here, though. Cathar's Crusade for even more plus counters. We've got nothing but permanents in hand, so we'll just continue to empty our hand. A Maelstrom Archangel puts 2 plus counters on all the stuff, but Cathar's Crusade is going to stay on the stack until Eureka is done resolving. We'll draw a couple more cards here. And Otherworld Atlas as well. Apparently this guy doesn't have a lot of permanents in hand. Unfortunately our card draw won't resolve until Eureka is done resolving either. And this is going to be 3, 4, 5 damage, so we should still survive the first strike if we need to. And there's a Dam, a Sorcery Speed piece of removal unfortunately. So currently a 5/6 with all the protection and evasion. So has to attack us of course. The Angel is going to go into the right. So we'll carefully take the first strike damage, and we get to draw 2 and discard 1, and yeah, nothing unfortunately. Another land and Onaginata. We needed this to be a generous gift, Anguished Unmaking, something like that. So down we go. Demoralize, all creatures gain menace until the end of the turn. Beamtown Beatstick back onto the Commander, and this is a 6/6 double striker, so that's game, isn't it? And there we are, a fast win for Slicer. So it looks like you're just getting a couple of quick games today. If anyone ever wants to have a crack at me in the future for mislabeling my decks as bracket 2, 3, 4, whatever, I've asked for bracket 3 games twice in a row here, and these are the types of games that you can get on Magic Online. People go solely off the Game Changer list, and they don't really look at anything else when it comes to brackets, so just bear that in mind with any games in the future. But we got one last good showing in with Squall at least. And I think that last game was interesting as well, a nice contrast between the first one, so hopefully you all enjoyed it. Big thank you to the patrons, as I always like to say. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.